Happy Friday evening. Hopefully everyone out there is having a great Friday as we get you ready for tonight's MLB slate here live before lock, sponsored by Yahoo. Fellas, it's typically we're here about an hour earlier, but that rare main slate started at 8 p.m. Eastern Coast time with 9 games, fellas.
Yeah, big time. Oddball of a start time for a main slate of baseball Friday night. But yeah, it's fun. There's a little extra prep time this afternoon. We've got all the lineups in, so it should be good.
Yeah, Friday night, a little bit later. The guy got nothing better to do, so I'm quite happy to be here. It's good.
my time's mostly spent in my house these days still anyway, so what else are we going to do, right? Let's hang out.
Of course, the way we like to do this show, we'll start off by talking about the pitchers, that we'll get into the stacks today, and then we'll get into the listener questions, whether that's on YouTube or on our premium Slack account. As always mentioned in Slack, just at me in Slack. That'll make sure that I do get your question. Let's talk about pitching, guys. Where do you guys want to start off? Do you want to talk at the top end, or you want to start off with some value pitchers?
Geoff, make the call.
I kind of feel like, tonight is a night where you should talk about the top end, because there's legitimately I guess you could say there's 4 top end pitchers that are in play. I think there's really 3 in play, and really I think most people will be targeting 2. But I think all these dudes are in play, and I think it's actually a pretty interesting night. I think it's a night where most people are going to be paying up for the top end anyways, and I think the value options are pretty limited and are going to be limited to just a couple names anyway. So I say we start at the top. Terry, or you can pick.
Sounds good. When we're saying the top, there are some different tiers of salary versus different tiers of projection versus different tiers of talent from what I'm seeing. So just going by what I'm seeing on Alex's board, looks like his top 2 starters projection wise are Lucas Giolito and Shane Bieber, just coming off the top. 2 of the top the top 2 salaries on DK, top 2 salaries on FanDuel. Do you want to just start by diving into them? Both pretty high end guys.
I'm good with that. What's your take on the top 2? I feels like Bieber is for me in this the superior spot anyways. We could definitely talk about who the better pitcher is and stuff like that, but just from a matchup perspective, obviously, going up against the
Beeb's got the Twinkies, and Giolito's got Detroit.
Sorry. So it's the opposite. I've already screwed this up. Bieber is the one who's got the less superior matchup, obviously, going up against the Twins, and obviously Giolito going up against Detroit. A team that you'd like to target anyways, regardless of who the pitcher is, right? So, Giolito is a dude. Again, we can talk about skill set and everything, but the power of the Twins. They do strike out at a pretty good rate, especially against right-handed pitching, but it's still scary, right? Bieber is a dude who can still give up the odd long ball and stuff like that. And he kind of has throughout his career, but obviously still a very high end pitcher. I think his K rate is probably a little bit superior in the spot, but I would rather pay down and take the matchup there. I don't know if you have any solid takes on it, but these guys are really do rate out pretty close. Even on for Alex, you mentioned, they're pretty close in projections. It looks like he does have Bieber ranked first, but not too big a gap.
Yeah, and honestly, just for me, from where I'm coming from, I prefer the matchup for Giolito quite a bit. The teams actually rank out a little bit closer than you would think. The Twins are, they're not quite as good as we give them credit for as far as their offensive production. So we can maybe make do, but as far as the strikeout rate, they do have a 25% strikeout rate is what I was getting at. But they're 4th in baseball overall with a 201 ISO and a 108 WRC plus. So it's a tricky spot there, but the upside is definitely there for a big time strikeout game from Bieber. So it's interesting from that perspective as far as the spot goes. And I imagine that's what I know about Alex's model is that strikeouts really drive a lot of what happens with pitchers, right? So I think that's what we're picking up there. Whereas with the White Sox, the Tigers are 16th in baseball with a 176 ISO. WRC plus is 12% below average against righty starters, and they've got a 28.3% strikeout rate. That's the worst in baseball. So the spot is just absolutely killer for Giolito for my money. So the difference there, I think, is worth going to Giolito, and the fact that we're picking up some savings. The ownership uptick, we're only talking about a 4% higher ownership. So I think Giolito's the play over Bieber. But going by what Alex has, we can justify going to either one as an SP1 here.
Yeah, the only thing I was going to mention about that game in particular, I know when we were doing the strategy show earlier, was about the weather. And so as I pull up the Minneapolis radar, we got a 70% chance of rain through 6 p.m. Central Time.
So that's tricky, and it did look a little bit like an ugly radar. But I think one of the weather forecasters that our news god goes to had mentioned something like only a 10% chance of postponement. Don't quote me on that, and definitely don't take that as gospel an hour from now as we're crashing into lock if things change. But as of right now, I wasn't making any big changes as far as my pitching shares based on the weather. I said that the other day about the Garrett Cole spot, and that game got postponed about 20 minutes before locks. So be on the ball, be ready to make some changes, maybe run a crunch without that game in it, and just be ready. But for right now, I'm rolling as if that game's happening.
Some other top end pitchers that we talked about earlier today. We talked about Luis Castillo. We talked about Adam Wainwright. That price point kind of jumped out to us a little bit of 8,800 for him in that spot. What's your take on those two guys?
Yeah, I like the spot for Castillo. Definitely getting a good projection for him in my model. Alex doesn't seem quite as bullish on him as my model does, but he's still ranked as his third highest on DraftKings, and third highest starter on both sites in terms of probability of success. Coming in right around the appropriate amount of ownership on DK, and I like the price over there. I think the matchup against St. Louis is pretty good there, if I'm remembering exactly, and I'm pulling it up as I'm speaking here. Yeah, the Cards are exactly league average in WRC plus, right at 100 in creating runs. 141 ISO versus right-handed pitching this year, so below average in that. They only strike out 22% of the time against righties, so they have some patience in the split. They walk 10.5% of the time. This is a really, really good righty. 31.1% strikeout rate this year. Only allowed 4 home runs in 43 in the third innings. So I love the spot for Castillo. What do you think about Castillo here, Geoff?
I like it. I like it a lot. I mean, I think my strategy tonight is mainly to pair Luis Castillo with one of the guys we just talked about. And I mean, if the rain concern's obviously getting up there, I know that was a little bit of concern earlier in the day. I'd be fine, fading one of the top two guys to go with Castillo. Gets a park boost as well. There's not much to fear in that St. Louis lineup. And again, I mean, look, Alex's model does obviously emphasize strike rate, as you should, but it's not like Castillo isn't like, doesn't have a good K rate himself. I mean, on the year it's like 31.1%, I think I got down. So it's not bad, like at all, right? So you're saving money. You're going to get basically half the ownership. At least that's what we're projecting, right? So I think he's a really, really good a tournament play. There's just not much to fear here. The only downside is St. Louis probably of the 3 teams we talked about in terms of opponents of these guys, might give you the least amount of strikeouts, but still really solid spot, man. Like I don't have a problem, especially GPPs. Obviously, we're talking about big tournaments. It's pretty big ownership gap. I didn't think it would be projecting this big between Castillo and the top 2, but it kind of is. So I'm all about it.
Yeah, I mean, even though it's like right at where Alex has him 4% chance of being one of the top 2, that's a gap that's created by those other 2 guys having such a big chance. But we know what happens in baseball. Those guys can easily get lit up, even though they're the top 2 aces by a good margin. And then Castillo slides into that top spot, even if he doesn't have an immense start from a case perspective. And I think he's got the talent where his strikeout stuff overcomes St. Louis's ability to limit the strikeouts. What about Waino on the other side of that one, though? 8,800 on DK and 87 on FanDuel, like Jay was saying. That's a huge price tag for him, though.
Yeah, I thought it was. I mean, I don't really have much interest here. I mean, I definitely have some interest in the bats for St. Louis. I mean, you get the lefties there. Moustakas, obviously, a guy I definitely have, assuming he's in the lineup. Votto, obviously. I don't think Moustakas is in the lineup, so there you go. Obviously Shogu leading off. I really like the lefties in that matchup with Wainwright. I know his ERA looks good, but I think that's kind of just a flash in the pan right now. I mean, his strikeout rate doesn't pop off or anything. I mean, it's just not really the same Adam Wainwright that I think most people probably still have in their mind from when he was like a kind of an ace pitcher, right? So I definitely, I mean, it is kind of interesting. Like the Reds don't have a huge team total here, so like he's getting respect, but I think it's a good spot for the lefty bats there. I'd be fine, using some Reds.
I'm curious about it because he's coming up a little bit for Alex as well. It looks like Alex has him looks like 6th overall on both sites, not drawing nearly the ownership that he's warrants based on that 9% probability of being in the top 2 and getting only half that as far as ownership goes on DK. The price is high though to be an SP2, and I don't like him as an SP1. There are several pitchers I like better as SP2s at lower prices on DK, although the ownership is trending a little bit higher. So maybe as like a weird pay up to be different SP2, rolling the dice with something that the boss sees, because I'm not really seeing it. Like you said, this is not the Adam Wainwright from back in the day. And the Reds are very good. 5th in baseball, 199 ISO versus righties this year, 99 WRC plus. So we'll call that league average. 24.8% strikeout rate is up there, I guess, if like we really need something to cling to. But yeah, that's a tough ask for me for 8,800 on DraftKings. And I don't know that I could get to it on the one pitcher site. And Wayne was a guy that I rode for a long time as he was declining. So that's an interesting one.
Yeah, he's $42 on Yahoo of Adam Wainwright. And, of course, this show is sponsored by Yahoo Daily Fantasy Sports. They now include CSV Edit and CSV Upload features when you're looking to play those multiple lineups. Make better choices. Choose Yahoo Daily Fantasy. And, by the way, if you want to get Shane Bieber on Yahoo, $61.
Yowza. That is that's meaty. What are so we can round it off? What are Giolito and Castillo over there?
Giolito is 56 and Castillo is 38.
Wow. So that's a significant price on Castillo over there.
Yeah.
That's lower than Wainwright, right? Wayne was in the low 40s, wasn't he?
Yeah, Wainwright was 42.
Yeah. I mean, that's almost much
Castillo in your life if you're playing on Yahoo.
Territory for Castillo. So he'll probably be, his ownership is projecting a lot higher over there, which
I would think.
Going to throw out some value pitchers for you today. Bubic, Kikuchi, Smith.
For me, I like Kikuchi. I think it's a great spot for that kid. It looks like Alex has Bubic ranked highest out of those guys. But just in looking at things to go with the guy that I was looking at first, he's in just a killer spot. This Diamondbacks lineup is awful. They are, let me see if I pull it up here. Diamondbacks, 123 ISO versus lefty pitchers, 27th in baseball. I'm sorry, that's the Mariners. The Diamondbacks are last in baseball versus lefties with a 107 ISO, a WRC plus 44% below average. They strike out 22.7% of the time, which is like okay. But I mean, I think that's just a killer spot for a kid who's been pitching really well overall this year. 27.4% strikeout rate. He completely changed his pitch mix. He was only 16.1% last year. Added a cutter that's like his primary pitch now. Throws that 92. He's got a 95 mile an hour heater to back that up, and just sets up his breaking balls really well with that stuff. So he's getting excellent whiff on all 4 pitches. I like the spot a lot for Kikuchi. He's getting a little bit of ownership because the price is so good, 6,200 on DraftKings and only 79 on FanDuel. Actually, he's not getting much ownership at all on FanDuel. Maybe he's a sneaky cheap SP one over there. And I love him as an SP2 on DraftKings despite the ownership.
Yeah, I'm in pretty much full agreement. I actually like the Mariners too tonight. I mean, like I'm going to bet them. Is just something, I don't do a ton of baseball betting, but I'm definitely, this is the spot. I'm pretty I think it's actually a really good spot for them at even money. So, or around abouts. But yeah, look, he's got a better K rate. The Diamondbacks don't, but the thing is, neither the Diamondbacks or the Pirates don't really strike out a ton. But from a K rate perspective, Kikuchi should have more potential. Again, it feels like maybe the Diamondbacks team total is pushing Kikuchi down a little bit in the rankings, because it's 4.58 from what I'm looking at, which again, I mean, it's actually fairly high, but I'm with you. Like, Arizona sucks. Like, I've tried to hit them in spots this year, and they just suck, man. Like, they never come through. I think it's a really good matchup. Like, the ballpark in Zona hasn't been a big deal either, like this year. So, yeah, I mean, I think Kikuchi's been on like every Friday show. I think he started every Friday show I've done this year. Like he just keeps producing, so I have no reason to fade him, and his price doesn't go up on the big sites. So, Bubik is fine too, but I just don't think it's as good a spot. I mean, yeah, the Pirates aren't good either, but they make contact. They don't strike out a ton, especially against lefties. Actually, like their splits are actually better. So I don't know. I mean, it feels like a good spot for both, but again, like in a tournament, I'm taking Kikuchi.
Yeah, I agree. The spot is very, very good for Bubic as well. I just don't think he's as good a strikeout option. So I think Kikuchi's a much better strikeout option in the spot. Just looking at the Pirates, they're dead last against right-handed pitching in ISO. So their ISO is 129 for the season, collectively the active roster. They're 35% below average WRC plus, 25% strikeout rate for against righties. So they do strike out a little bit against righty pitcher. Sorry, he's a lefty. So forget everything I just said. I just noticed that.
I thought I was wrong for a sec. I had to go back and check.
My bad. It's still a bad lineup. But yeah, I wrote down the wrong hand for those splits. So scratch the splits, but the spot is still good.
Guys, let's move over to stacks. And I guess let's just go to Coors Field, because I know that's going to be the question everyone's got. So what's obviously you can play both sides here. Obviously early on today, the ownership was crazy for David Dahl, but he's not in the lineup. So I think everyone was kind of looking for a little sour relief. But what's your take on both sides in this one?
I mean, for me, it's just, again, it's one of those spots where, and I've talked about this before, like with the Angels projecting to be the top stack, I usually just try, and especially for tournaments, we'll go to the other side. I mean, you get lower ownership on a Colorado offense that has guys like Story, obviously, Blackman, like just with good power and probably with a better matchup. I mean, I really like the lefty bats here, like going up against Canning. So, I mean, Marquez is a dude who's obviously pitched at Coors a lot. I mean, I'm not saying that you need to fade the Angels because Germán Marquez is pitching or something like that, but like if I'm picking one of these pitchers to target, it would be the Angels pitcher. So if I'm going to get lower ownership on some of these bats on the Colorado side, I'd be fine with that. I mean, you don't have as many lefties to pick from tonight as maybe we'd like, but Story, Blackman, Arenado, obviously, and there's good cheap options. Like the whole from 5 to 9 is absolutely affordable, and I think that's the one thing that sticks out about Coors tonight, and probably why actually both these stacks are going to be chalky. There's cheap bats. Like it's not like Mike Trout is more expensive than he usually is. Rendon isn't expensive. Like there's a ton of cheap bats here. So I'll take a slightly low ownership on Colorado, but don't expect either of these stacks to be low owned.
Yeah, and as you're saying, it's particularly in the back end and the back end of the Colorado lineup where we might find a little bit of that low-owned quality. You've got Matt Kemp and McMahon specifically sitting there below 10% ownership on my last update. So you can grab those two fairly cheap, get to some little bit of power, a little bit of upside there for some home run, the ability to drive the ball, and then differentiate. Grab an expensive Charlie Blackman, who's also trending for low ownership because he's pricey, and roll with that, and then build in like your Story and your Arenado, who you're swallowing the ownership on willingly because they're so darn good. The other side of it, you're eating a lot of ownership up and down the lineup. Simmons is the lowest owned player that I would be actually interested in. I don't really have much for Taylor Ward or Luis Renfigo there, so it's not a great spot as far as I'm concerned, ownership-wise on that Angels stack. Usually when Coors is heavy like this, I like to get away from it and look to other bats and other big upside spots. But I think there's just a lot of potential in this game in the Rockies side of things. Marquez is a pitcher I don't necessarily like to attack at Coors. You mentioned the fact that he's pitched there a lot. He's pitched there well a lot. We've talked about it on the show in the past, but his career xFIP at home is 3.37 compared to a 5.19 ERA. His strikeout rate goes up at home, 23.4% on the road, 24.9% at home. Got good breaking stuff, good whiff rates on both his breaking balls to both hands, so he can get hitters out on both sides of the plate. There's talent in that Angels lineup. We know that. 10th best in baseball, 196 ISO versus right-handed pitchers, 122 WRC plus. They strike out 5th best in baseball at a 19.8% rate, so they don't strike out a ton. 2nd best in baseball, drawing the walk, 12.4%, so get some extra opportunities there too. Could be a big spot for them, but I don't hate rolling out a tiny bit of Marquez in a weird little sneaky spot, and he could limit that offense. That's all I'll say.
In terms of some other stacks, as I was looking at our top stack tool over at Awesemo.com, and of course, if you want to get access to that top stack tool, you got to sign up for an Awesemo Plus weekly pass. Go to Awesemo.com/join to sign up for a weekly pass for $15.95. Your ownership projection, top stack tool, top pitch tool, all of those things. So you definitely want to sign up there. Looking at some other stacks that are getting ownership. Some of the ones, let me throw out the Milwaukee Brewers as one.
That's one that I wrote about. I like that one. I think the spot's great for the Brewers. I really do. So let me just pull them up here as I'm talking about them. But we've got a lot of really capable bats in that. They're 230 ISO, 4th best in baseball against left-handed pitching. And they're facing John Lester, a fading lefty. Lester's a guy that we've gotten to over the years. We've won a little bit of money with here and there. We've probably lost more with it when we've trusted him when we shouldn't have. This year, he's only striking out 15.9% of hitters. He's given up 9 home runs in 40 1/3 innings. He's getting just 42% ground balls. He'd be like a mid to high 40s guy, so he's losing that. He's given up a lot of hard contact this year. I just really like the spot for the Brewers. They do strike out a good amount, 25.6 strikeouts against left-handed pitching, but Lester's not really a strikeout pitcher. So I think this is a really good spot for them to generate a lot of contact, potentially drive a couple balls over the wall. 126 WRC plus against lefties, so very, very good at generating runs and opportunities here. So I really like the spot for the Brewers.
Yeah, they're definitely up there for me as well. Lester, 9 home runs already to right-handed bats have written down. And then, in Milwaukee's lineup, it's just littered with lefties. I mean, it's obviously Yelich is playing, but Jerko, absolutely love that spot. Brian Braun at 3,500, absolutely fine. I mean, Garcia, I basically just like a 1 through 5. I mean, but you can even go at the back end if you want. I mean, I think, and take some value from there if you really want to. But I mean, I think this is a very good option. Like if you are looking to go off, the Coors stack, and I really like the Coors bats tonight. I mean, I think this is a slate where you should try and get some exposure. I mean, I don't think we have like a ton of other high end stacks, but this is a good spot to get like just a little bit, get your salary down a little bit, and then you can maybe just go with like a mini Coors stack or something, to fill it out, because these Milwaukee bats aren't expensive. So I really like the spot. Absolutely agree with tagging.
Yeah, that was why they ended up in my overnight column, I think is where I wrote about them, where I usually write about the chalkier stacks. I expected this team to have more ownership. I mean, they've got a few guys drawing a lot. Avi Garcia is drawing like 30% on DraftKings, leading off for this team. It's a killer spot for Avi. He costs only $2,700, so that's why he's so popular. But I thought the back end of the lineup would really lift a lot of the team ownership, and they're really not drawing a lot. They're not name brand guys. Some of them are not that good, like an Orlando Arcia, Luis Urias, not much there, Tyrone Taylor. But I do like Jacob Nottingham. He's hitting 9th, catcher, only 2.8% owned on DK, 2,600. He's got sneaky power upside. He hasn't really converted it into game power, but there's strength in the bat. So we could pick off a sneaky home run with him. I don't hate that spot, righty-lefty. And then you mentioned Jerko. I love the spot for Jed Jerko. He was my home run call for the day. Somebody in Slack was asking for a low-owned home run, and that happened to be the one I picked anyway, so I threw that out there. So really love first base, third base eligibility. You can flip them around in constructions. 3,900. People are probably not willing to pay that price for him. He's going very low owned on DK. 2,700 on FanDuel, getting a little bit more popular over there, but cleaning up for this team, love the spot.
I'm going to throw out a game that I was just kind of looking at the stack, and I'll get your guys' take on it. What do we think about the A's and the Rangers?
I mean, the Rangers are kind of interesting too, from like a lower owned perspective. I mean, I don't really like love it or anything, but I mean, like Fires, I mean, you could definitely take some shots here. I mean, I don't like Odor is just like a one-off is probably fine from just like a power perspective. I'm just pulling up their lineup here. Yeah. So Yeah, Odor hitting, I mean, lefty versus righty. So, I mean, obviously try and hit the lefties. I mean, Joey Gallo is actually really affordable too. So, Sam Huff is 2,200 too. I mean, that's actually a really nice play down there. Another catcher, right? So, I mean, Terry brought up Monahan. I think both these guys are actually really good punt plays tonight. So, I have a little bit more interest in the Rangers just because, again, there's so many cheaper options here, and you could go a one-off with most of these guys too. So.
Yeah, look, both teams doing pretty well in Alex's top stacks tool. They're ranked third and fourth on both sites. So it's interesting, both sides of this game. And it's really because of that pitching matchup, right? You just mentioned Mike Fiers kind of struggling. 5.93 xFIP on the year, only striking out 13.5% of hitters, 1.43 whip. The back of the baseball cards are a little bit, numbers are a little bit deceiving on Fiers. And I'm hoping that a lot of people just kind of read the blurb that was on MLB.com where they said something to the effect of, he's been a rock in the A's rotation, now 3-1 with a 3.22 ERA over his last 4 starts. Yeah, he's not been pitching well, so I don't know what they're talking about. So I agree. This is a pitcher we can absolutely target with some Rangers bats. It ranked out in what Alex was saying, what Alex's numbers are seeing. On the season, they're not that great. I mean, 1.43 ISO, WRC plus 33% below average. We've talked about their struggles a lot. They're a bad lineup. But you touched on some of the guys that I really like in that lineup. I would also throw in Anderson Tejada as a potential wraparound play from the bottom end, second base and shortstop eligibility. Under 1% ownership, $3,000 on DraftKings. Dynamite flexibility, top end prospect for the organization, has some power and has some speed in his bat. So I like him. I like him wrapping around and connecting to Leody Taveras up top. Maybe Isaiah can kind of Falefa. You can build on a lot of speed and get a couple of those guys on base in front of a Joey Gallo, and something could happen there. You've also got Elvis Andrus hitting 5th. He's back in the lineup today. So I had missed that when I wrote about this stack earlier. And then on the other side, Luis Garcia going up against this A's team. Yeah, sign me up. I mean, the A's are drawing under what they should be on ownership on DraftKings, not on FanDuel. There's no ownership edge really on FanDuel, but they still look like an excellent stack just if you're willing to eat a little ownership there. We know that Garcia, not much of a pitcher here, mostly pitched out of the bullpen, and then they get Jordan Lyles. So Garcia is an opener. So they get Jordan Lyles coming in the second or third inning. He's 1.60 home run per 9 last year, 1.77 so far this year. Terrible quality of contact numbers overall, 17.2% strikeout rate. Just not a good pitcher. A's are 13th in the league with a 1.82 ISO against righties this year, but a 109 WRC plus. Strikeout 23.3% of the time. He's not a strikeout guy. So I think between those two pitchers pitching the bulk of this game, I think we can definitely roll some A's bats here.
One of the questions we got in on YouTube, and we're going to get into all the questions that are getting asked here, was from Bruce, where he asked us about our favorite low-owned stack.
Yeah, let me get
favorite low-owned stack. So if Bruce is willing to pay money, and I wish I knew which site he was playing on because that really factors in. So guys, when you ask those questions, throw in your site. Both the Padres and the White Sox are extremely expensive, and they are going way under-owned, and it's because of the price. So if Bruce can figure out a way to make those teams work, those are the teams that I would immediately say to target. There are teams higher ranked on the stacks tool than those two overall, but I think they're in killer spots. They're very, very good offenses, and nobody's really going to be on them. So if you can get to the bats of that kind of quality when nobody's going to be on them, that's a play I'll always make.
Yeah, that's that's pretty much the theme, right? Because there's, again, that's what we talked about off the top. Everybody is going to be paying up for pitching tonight, and rightfully so. Like, it's a good spot for those top pitchers, right? And there is actually a lot of cheap bats tonight. I mean, we just went through 3 really good stacks: Brewers, Texas, Oakland. You can target all those teams and feel pretty good about it, and then go with the studs, right? So, and maybe mix in like a Coors bat or two, but no one's going to be paying up for the Sox. It's a really good spot, though. I mean, obviously they're massive favorites, and they got one of the biggest team totals there as well. But going up against a prospect in Casey Mize, I mean, he's probably not even going to be pitching that long. Yeah, it's a good spot. So definitely that is a good contrarian leverage play if you're gonna kind of pay down for your pitching. I mean, that is the spot I would go to stack up on, because you're going to get really minuscule ownership on a lot of those dudes. And then the other one that's projecting out low, and I kind of mentioned them at the top, mainly, again, I just really like the lefty bats is the Reds. I mean, everybody likes Castillo, but I'm not afraid to go after like Adam Wainwright here. I mean, again, I think his peripheral numbers are, just make him look better than he is. I mean, obviously Votto would be like the kind of centerpiece around there. And it kind of sucks. Like I said, Moustakas doesn't look like he's playing, but there's still a couple like Goodwin is fine in there. And then you can throw Suarez. So, like a 2 through or like even a 3 through 7 or something. It's really cheap too. So you can get low ownership, cheap bats and still fit in some cooler stuff. So I kind of like the Reds bats tonight as well.
That makes sense. Before we move on, sorry, Jason.
No, go ahead, man.
I think this is critical in what we were just talking about a moment ago. Do we think it's worth the double pay down to be able to get to those White Sox, Padres, super expensive stacks? Because that's really what we're talking about here. Because we'd be faded. We can't get to a full stack of White Sox and say the Brewers or even like the Rangers and pay up to a Bieber, a Giolito, even a Castillo or a Kenta Maeda. Maybe you can do it with like a Woodruff, who we haven't talked about yet. But more likely, you're going to be needing to go to a double pay down like a Kikuchi and a Bubic to make that work, which is a placeholder I actually built before the show and I really like, but I don't know if I'm swallowing way too big of a delta on that pitching. And that's what concerns me there. So what do we think about that?
It is tough. Like, I think it's probably a little bit too thin. Like, it just feels like you're going to need at least one of these top 2 pitchers in to really like to build the proper lineup tonight. I like taking shots with cheap pitchers. I'm a guy who I don't mind like throwing in 2 cheap pitchers in there and building, but it just doesn't feel right tonight. I mean, it really feels like you need to get one of them in. And I'm just not sure if the upside is there mainly with Bubic. I do think the upside is there with Kikuchi, but yeah. So, for me, I would probably be, as much as I do like the White Sox, I mean, you're not going to be able to fit in probably as many as you want. I mean, they're just still, I don't want to say they're overpriced. They're just priced up to the point where you can't do all that you want with them. And then, go to town in a couple other spots. Right. So, there's cheap bats, you can get them in and probably make a kind of a really stars and scrubs lineup or something and still maybe get one of the top pitchers in. But I just don't think that's going to be optimal tonight. There's so many other cheap bats in good spots too. So as much as I do like the leverage play, it's not something I would go crazy with. But the nice thing about it is if you are making multiple lineups, like you're not going to need much exposure to them to go overweight. So I guess that's the other factor of it. Yeah. If you roll
at 150, exactly like you said. I mean, San Diego going at 2%, Chicago going around 1.1% in my last update as a team. So you don't need many shares to get over the top on that, which is nice, like you said. And I agree. I think it's thin slicing the probabilities here. We rarely see a night where the top 2 pitchers on DK are both doubling up the field, basically, as far as being the chance of being the top 2 guys. So I just think with that, it's just asking too much to do the double pay down tonight. I'll probably do it just in some of those shares, like I mentioned, just to get it out there. But I don't necessarily think it's your best path toward the top of the GPP. Let's say it that way.
You mentioned about Brandon Woodruff and, just kind of looking at our projections our ownership projections on DK. He is one of the highest owned pitchers.
Yeah, and it's an interesting spot for Woodruff, right? He's pitching pretty well. He's a 28.7% strikeout rate this year versus lefties, 29% versus righties. So getting very good results versus both sides of the plate. He's got a ridiculously high spin four-seamer. He gets nearly 30% whiff on, just a tremendous four-seamer. Pitching really well here. But he's going up against the Cubbies. They're 7th in baseball with a 194 ISO in the split, 101 WRC plus, 25.5% strikeout rate. So very good spot for strikeouts. So it could be good upside for him. But you mentioned the ownership is there. Which I was not expecting against the Cubs. I was surprised to see that ownership trend to that spot. So I think it's mostly based on the 8,500 price, people not wanting to go to Waino as an SP2 at 8,800, and probably it's just an easier click for him at 85 than it is for Waino, Garrett Richards at 75, German Marquez at home in Coors Field. So I think he's just a person that people are just kind of naturally clicking to just in that price tier. But I do think he's got a good upside spot. So it's an interesting one.
Yeah, I was a little bit interested. I was surprised a little bit about the ownership as well. But I guess maybe part of it is, people are going to use Bubik and Kikuchi, but maybe they don't trust them as much. So, to go with like a pay up and then kind of a value pitcher, they're going to click on Woodruff. Or there's also people out there, kind of like we were talking about, who want 2 cheap pitchers, but they're not willing to go Bubik and Kikuchi, so they're going to go Woodruff and one of the two, right? So I guess that's why his ownership's up there a bit. Yeah, the K rate is great. The Cubs, the Cubs strike out quite a bit against right-handers. Like it's not a bad spot. The Cubs team total is small too. Like it's basically like 4 flat. So it looks good on paper. There's definitely some. As I say that, I still kind of like I don't actually mind like mixing in like a mini Cubs stack with Schwarber and Rizzo, like the lefties. Definitely target the lefties if you're going to use the Cubs. They're going to be low owned as well, but Woodruff is in there. He should be considered. He's had a good year. He's a little bit been up or down, but the upside is there. So maybe if you're doing like the cheap pitching, I think Woodruff and Kikuchi, a 2 stack on DraftKings probably has more potential for me than a Bubik Kikuchi one. So. All in all, it's just like you said, it's an interesting spot. A little bit sucks that the ownership is up a little bit. I'd have more interest if it was like a lot lower, but still a pretty decent spot for a good night.
I was really hoping for lower ownership on him. I thought we were going to get away with it with the sneaky one there, and it's just not there.
Yeah, with the three big studs up there, and like Castillo's price a little bit down. I wasn't really expecting it either. So we'll see how it actually works out. But yeah, I guess it's projected to be up there. So
guys, we do have a weather update from Minneapolis. The tarp is on the field. The game will be delayed due to weather.
Anything following that? I don't have it up in front of me. Sorry, Jason. Anything following that as far as expected start time and clearing after the fact? Usually when they delay in advance, it's a good thing.
Yeah, I haven't seen when they expect the game to start, but right now what I'm just seeing is that I'm seeing a picture of the tarp on the field and another saying that the start of the game will be delayed.
Okay, so let's keep an eye on that over the next 25 minutes.
Yeah.
It should. I think the biggest impact, it's probably going to drive Bieber's ownership down. So I think again, you don't mind taking on that risk, or maybe you got an inside track on the weather, or the weatherman in Minnesota or something. Like Bieber is probably going to get lower ownership than Giolito now. So just something to consider. He's obviously way riskier now at this point too, but yeah.
Let's I know we have a bunch of single entry players that hop in here, and Geoff is one of those guys, and he's looking for a little help on FanDuel with what pitcher he should be rolling with.
So
on FanDuel, let's see. Let me get it over to a screen where I actually have the ownership as well.
So
yeah. That's what I'm doing. I'm just looking at the ownership for FanDuel and the pricing and stuff like that. Yeah, like For me, I like the spot for Castillo here. You're still gonna get lower ownership than Woodruff. The price 9,100, actually a bigger discount on FanDuel looks like than on DraftKings. So you seem to be getting the same kind of ownership discount versus like a better pricing there. He still projects out as the 3rd top pitcher there. That is probably where I'd go, unless you want to take a shot with like a cheap guy like Kikuchi. But actually, his price isn't as great on FanDuel anyway. So just scratch that. I would go. I like Castillo there.
Yeah, I don't like the price as much on Kikuchi at 79, ranked middle of the board for Alex.
I would avoid him.
Yeah, so really, if we're looking at it, we're looking at the top guys, and if you don't want to eat that 25% ownership, which honestly, on Bieber, if he goes and 30-ish on Giolito, it's heavy, but it's probably worth it. It's probably pretty good chalk for a one pitcher. I think Castillo is the right call there if you're not going to that, though. Maybe you get away with a sneaky Kenta Maeda who is going half as owned as he should be, but it's only, he's the fifth ranked guy on the board, but only like a 7% chance of being your top starter. That said, that 7% is roughly the same as where Alex has Castillo, and he's only getting 3% ownership compared to the 13% that Castillo is getting. So you could get something there sneaky with Maeda. Pitching very well this season, taking on an overrated Cleveland lineup. I've come around on that. I know it's a team we've talked about a lot for DFS, and I do still like them for DFS purposes. But if you really dig into them, their numbers on the season don't necessarily really hold up. And if my search would cooperate with me, so their 143 ISO is 26th in the league in overall this year, 14% below average WRC plus against righties. So 23.4% strikeout rate is higher for them than we expected to see. So could be a sneaky little spot for Maeda. So if you really want to get different on FanDuel, that would be an interesting play.
Yep.
I got there was a comment on YouTube. You want to talk about a sneaky spot? There's an offense we never talk about, guys. Someone goes sneaky pirate stack.
The reason we never talk about the Pirates.
Look, I mentioned before I was trying to do their splits and I had the wrong hand, but the right hand is in my model, so I'll click back over to him and let's see what the old model thinks of him here. Getting a lot of yellow in my sorting here, which is my conditional formatting, which is not a great start, but they project okay. It's more about the 2 through 6 spots in that lineup, right? We've got Kevin Newman, Brian Hayes, Brian Reynolds, Colin Moran, Josh Bell in that spot. If you wanted to grab a stack, that's the slot that I would do it from. And they've got good pricing. So you can get away with building a stack out of that. That's not a terrible offense that's going up against a rookie pitcher without a great strikeout rate. We know that they limit strikeouts well, put the ball in play. So maybe we can justify it. I wouldn't go crazy with it. It's not something that Alex is really seeing. He's got them 5th from the bottom out of 18 teams on both sites. And they're drawing right about the ownership that they should be. It's almost dead on. Actually, it's 3.3% probability of success, 3.3% ownership on DK, 2.8 on FanDuel, 2.9% ownership. So directly level with where they should be. I don't know if it's that sneaky.
Yeah, I guess I should give them a little bit more credit here. Because just looking at a couple things. Their team total actually is higher than the Cubs. Tonight. And really, I know we've talked about Bubik as a decent value play, but you're right. He's a rookie. It's not like he's got a crazy strikeout rate or anything. And I know I think I already mentioned this. The Pirates are pretty good at making contact at least. So, Stallings isn't the worst. And you mentioned obviously you're going to use Josh Bell in a Pirate stack. Newman through Reynolds. Yeah, I guess especially if you're paying up for the top 2 pitchers. There's honestly way worse stacks that I've talked about before than doing that tonight. Especially with, again, honestly, this 2 legitimate, really good spots for aces to pay up. I don't think as many people as probably we think are going to pay up for both. So if you do it, A, the ownership might not be quite as high as we think, and B, this is going to be a really contrarian way to get a unique double pay up stack with the double pitching, right? So, yeah, it's definitely got a little bit of merit tonight. I know I laughed it off the start, but I usually laugh bad teams off the start anyway. So, it's not that crazy tonight. There are some things that say this could actually work.
Of course, we appreciate everyone that's right now over in the YouTube chat. Be sure to give us a thumbs up. That does help us out a lot. Do want to let you know about a promo we got going on over at Awesemo.com. Sign up today for an Awesemo Plus NFL Weekly Pass for 50% off when you use the promo code REDZONE at checkout. That's $750 for 1 week of Awesemo Plus NFL. Gives you access to our player projections, ownership projections, top stacks, and more. This is a limited time offer. It's valid through September the 15th. So head over to Awesemo.com, join page, Awesemo.com/join to take advantage of that offer today. You see that right there here in the corner of the screen. Anthony, I appreciate you in the super chat. He says, Kikuchi or Woodruff on FanDuel? Kikuchi or Woodruff on FanDuel, and why?
So we kind of touched on both guys as far as what they're going to give you in terms of upside. Alex has Woodruff ranked significantly higher. but he's drawing double the ownership of what his probability of success is. Just to talk about it in terms of what Alex is seeing within the top starters tool. Kikuchi down the board, 4.2% probability of being the top starter compared to Woodruff's 7%. So you're not talking about a gigantic gulf between the two as far as what Alex sees about them being the best guy. You're not saving anything. You're paying $300 more for Kikuchi in a lesser ranked spot, but you're picking up an immense amount of ownership advantage. He's trending under 1% ownership, where Woodruff is going off at 15. So do I like Kikuchi better at 1% ownership in a spot that I was raving about earlier, as compared to Woodruff in a spot that we also like, but against a much, much better team at 15% ownership? I think I can get to Kikuchi there.
I would agree. I mean, obviously I kind of, when we were talking about which pitcher would you do for like a one lineup, I kind of said, obviously I like Castillo better, but that's talking about one lineup. Like if you're really just talking about like who's in play for tournaments tonight, I mean, the ownership that's projecting between Woodruff and Kikuchi is the gulf is huge. Basically, Kikuchi is going to be like nothing up. And again, it's to the fact that he's more expensive on Woodruff, whereas on DK, he's like $2,000 less, right? So I think their strikeout potential is actually pretty similar too. So, actually like a lot better matchup for Kikuchi. Again, like I talked about Seattle. I like the spot for Seattle tonight just to pick up the win in general, right? So the ballpark concerns aren't as big again with Arizona this year. I like the lefty matchup against Arizona. Yeah, I can absolutely get him behind him as, again, tournament play. It's not like your core lineup or something, or like a single entry or cash game. Talking tournaments, maybe you're mixing him into multiple lineups. Absolutely, yeah, I agree. I would go Kikuchi over Woodruff, because Woodruff will be probably the second or highest third owned pitcher on FanDuel. We'll see how this Bieber, the weather news way it works out, but yeah, he's going to be popular there.
We do have a quick note from Mac that he sent me a little bit earlier when I was talking about the Arizona spot. The roof is open in Arizona, so that is a little bit of a factor there. And looks like, according to what he's telling me, the roof is also open in Texas for just the second time this season, 70 to 75 in Texas.
Did it affect? Do you remember? Like, did it affect things the last time it was open? Like, did they have a high scoring game? Or
in Texas? I honestly don't remember.
Yeah, I have no idea.
I don't even know what day it was.
I'm just wondering if maybe you had.
If you're watching, Mac, let me know. Let us know.
Yeah. Someone out there knows.
Yeah, those market factors.
Yeah, we mentioned, speaking about Arizona, we talked a little about Caleb earlier. Someone was asked about pitch count. I haven't seen anything in terms of how long he could go, but he did pitch 70 pitches in a simulated game last Saturday.
Oh, you're talking about Caleb Smith?
Yeah.
Oh, okay, yeah.
Yeah, Smith. I'm not really on the Smith side of things anyway, but I agree. I think he'd probably be in that like 75 pitch range, just basically based on that. I get a middling type projection for him. I don't know that there's a ton there. Just looking at the board, looks like Alex does see a little bit in him. He's got him around the middle of the board. So maybe he's expecting a few more pitches from him and kind of a full outing here. But I know he does have, we all know actually, because it's on the top stacks tool, that he does like the Mariners here. So I think that I'm not sure how much Smith I would really get to. Maybe as a mix and match kind of at 5,900 on DK, you can roll him out there in small percentages. On the one pitcher site, not really for me, even though it's a Mariners lineup that I don't love, but we do, think is in a good spot today.
I wouldn't even touch him. Who knows what his pitch count's going to be? I can't see it being more than 80 pitches, to be honest. I like the Mariners too, like I said. So, I wouldn't touch him. No.
By the way, if you have any questions, be sure to line those up in the chat. We're here for about another 10-ish minutes or so before we go to lock. I was just kind of looking to see. The Twins did put out a tweet noting that the game is delayed, but we do not have a start time. So, it would appear, based on just what I'm seeing, that we're going to get this game in tonight, but it's got to be a little buyer beware when, you've already got a game delayed.
Yeah, and really that's why I asked that question about what if we're seeing anything as far as the downstream reporting, because usually that's what they'll do. If they see, hey, it's going to be really ugly right at our scheduled start, but then everything clears an hour from now and we have a nice night, they'll delay the start of the game for an hour. I'd like to think that with no fans in the stands, nothing to worry about there, they can just send the guys into the clubhouse and wait it out. But we've seen teams scratch. We've seen teams wait this year. It's wildly unpredictable this year.
Yeah.
Definitely not comfy with it, but I'm so far in these crunches that I'm doing in the background here, I've got full go on Biebs. So we'll see.
It should bring lower ownership on Bieber, that's for sure. I mean, I'm sure there's a bunch of people, just adjusting for this right now. So, it would be nice if they could give like a start time. That's usually like the best sign. But
yeah,
that would be pretty cool.
Cole the other day where his ownership plummeted as we were heading toward before that delay got announced. He went from something like 75% on a more stark DK slate down to, I think it was the high 50s right when the game scratched. So it was, people do get scared off by that rain for sure.
Yeah, I mean, Castillo's ownership probably going to go up a bit. Not Matus because he's in the same game. Woodruff's probably going to go up a little bit. Things to consider there. It is what it is.
Julio had asked about do you saw value in Akiyama, who is 2,100 on DK.
Shogo, the leadoff hitter from the Mets. Yeah, I mean he's a guy who came over with some pedigree from Japan, and he's just really not performed at all this year so far. Sitting at 225, 333, 279 slash 0.054 ISO, WRC plus 29% below average for the year. So he gets on base at an okay clip leading off of that lineup. He is a speed guy. He's a contact hitter, speed guy who was, an average-ish home run hitter in the NPB. Not generating any power here. 7.9% ownership. Leading off for that Reds team. If you're getting to the Reds stack, I like it a little bit. I don't think I would go to him as a one-off by any means, really, though.
Yeah, I agree. There's like we already talked about some better power options around the same price. So definitely on this slate with a lot of cheap bats. The one-off, no, you can do better than that. But yeah, I don't mind the red stack at all. And, you can definitely use him. There's basically 3 lefties. You can go 1 through 5. You get Goodwin, Votto, and Shogu in there. So I like him as a part of that. That's fine. I think, Wainwright has definitely gotten hammered by lefties at points in his career. Like I said, I really don't. I really see like some runs getting scored on Wainwright, if not tonight, soon. So I like it. I don't mind it. But yeah, there are, if you're going one off, it's generally like let's go for the home run. So not really his thing. But yeah, the price is extremely makes the red stack like so easy to fit in, which is nice.
Yeah.
And EMAC just sent us a message saying that the August 10th game was the only other time the roof was open. 95 degrees, though.
Oh, okay.
So that's a 20-degree difference in temperature in the days?
I really would question, and it was a 10-2 Mariners game. Why would you open the roof at 95 degrees?
Yeah, maybe they're just trying it out or something. That's actually a good question.
Just wanted to see what would happen, I guess. Yeah, work.
I'd be like, was the roof stuck?
A new car on the highway,
I'd be like, did they open the roof up earlier in the day? It got stuck. They couldn't close it.
That would
be like the only reason.
That has happened. So,
the one I feel like we really haven't talked about the Giants bats at all. Going up against Padres, we talked about the Padres side of it, but what do you guys think about the Giants bats?
It's actually a pretty good spot, I think, for the lefties. Just gonna pull up my game thing here.
Yeah, I'm with this.
Garrett Richards, yeah, absolutely. Yeah, sorry, go ahead.
Oh, no, take it. I was just going to fill the space while you were looking.
Yeah.
Go ahead. Go for it, Geoff.
Oh, okay. Yeah, no, I mean, look, Garrett Richards, I mean, obviously, like, not in any kind of form or anything like that. The K rate is down. He's been giving it up to lefty hitters. I don't mind the Giants. The Giants have come alive a little bit here in the last little bit. Just at least some of their bats have. So, you got Belt. Dickerson has been good for a while. I mean, paying up for Yastrzemski on this slate, probably not. You probably don't need to do that. Not with Coors and stuff like that, but a little, like a 3-man stack or something. Maybe just use like Dickerson and Belt. I like that a little bit. Crawford is actually down there too. Could go as a one. He's a little bit expensive, but yeah, I think the lefty bats are in a good spot. I don't think it's a spot where I would go completely crazy and just stack the team tonight, because I think there's better spots we've already touched on. Like the spot for Belt probably the most just because of the price.
Just kind of looking to see if there's anything new on the Indians and Twins.
As was I.
So this was 13 minutes ago from the Twins official Twitter. Tarp on the field tonight's game will not start on time. That was all they gave.
All right. Well, like I said, I think I might be pretty much rolling with it. We'll see what happens. So if anybody sees anything out there, give a shout. But as far as the Giants go, I'm pretty much with Geoff. I think it's a tough price to swallow on Yaz, but they're trending for like no ownership in what I do think is a good spot against Garrett Richards. He doesn't have much left in the tank really, and we just know that this Padres offense is just dynamite. So. I'm sorry, this Giants offense has been just dynamite so far this year. So I think we can attack him. Let's see, they're 8th in baseball overall, 189 ISO against righties, 15% above average WRC plus. So we've seen Richards limit power a little bit on both hands, but he's a 4.26 overall xFIP this year, heavy spin fastball, but he doesn't generate elite whiff. So I think it's a decent spot.
Yeah, actually, if we're going to the stack tool too, if you go by ownership to just like what they're projected as to be their chance of being the top stack, it's actually one of the best kind of correlations with ownership versus potential, anyways. So that is interesting. Good to end the show or touch on them at least once, because they're going to they are getting overlooked on this slate completely. Whether they're going to factor in or not, obviously we'll have to see, but.
Geoff brings up a kind of a beginner DFS question, and this is in terms of FanDuel, saying is 2 4-team stacks ideal on FanDuel?
So there's no such thing as ideal, right? And if I say it is ideal and it doesn't happen tonight, then everybody will be mad. So overall, theory-wise, we want to build stacks. Stacks are going to, when you have 2 correlated hitters together in a lineup, they're going to lift the tide of all the other hitters in the lineup if they produce, if they go off. If there's 3 guys on base, a guy hits a grand slam, everybody scores points. That's your general thinking. You want to have the big bopper, and you want to have the guys hitting ahead of them in that lineup. You don't want to look for a guy here, a guy here, a guy here, and a guy down here in the batting order. You guys can't see my hand when I do that. But you want to get, because those guys aren't going to be as correlated. They're not necessarily going to be on base when something happens with the other guy. It's an event-based sport, so you want to grab as much of those rare events as we can. That's why we stack instead of just trying to throw darts at the wall and trying to find events all over the spectrum of baseball. We want to focus on those games and capture all of the events within that game. Every night in baseball, in the top 10 scorers, there are 2 teammates, and usually there are 2 groups of 2 teammates. So we want to try and capture those opportunities and have the rising tide lift all boats. It's the best I can put.
Yeah, I mean, there's nothing ideal exactly. I mean, generally you just want to, go after good value, but for tournament lineups and big fields, you absolutely need the correlation. You're just looking for, again, the teams that have the potential, have the best upside to go off, and then once you figured out which those teams are, you look at the bats, which ones are going to be best correlated within that game. Which way can you stack it to give you like a little bit different, maybe if the stack's going to be chalky. So and there's lots of things to consider, but really you're just looking to target the best teams, and then within the teams, obviously the best way to stack it so that they have the correlation like Terry was talking about. So yeah, don't get too caught up about you have to have like a certain number of people or a certain number of teams. It's just trying to make the best lineups within that stacking idea. So.
Yeah, and I'll add one more thing. Typically, over time, my favorite constructions and the most winning proven constructions on FanDuel have been 4-4 or 4-3 with a one-off. With their broken pricing, that paradigm has kind of changed because you can essentially play whoever you want and go home run hunting and go power hunting and go upside hunting. So the stack I don't have questions about whether it's still an effective strategy. I do still think it's the optimal strategy, but we're seeing some wonky results with that pricing. So that's the last thing I'll say about that. I think FanDuel really has broken their game with their pricing. So
I guess I'll give you a little good news potential on the Twins and Indians. Someone in chat know this, and also a newspaper writer up there know this as well, saying one factor, the Twins are on Fox tomorrow. So doubleheader probably out of the question for Saturday.
Oh, interesting. Yeah, that's really interesting. They're not going to want to cut that broadcast down to a seven inning game if they can help it.
Yeah, so that's a great point. I want to say Sean in chat brought that up, and I saw that again as well. Daryl asks, he goes, "What do you think of a Kansas City stack in FanDuel along with the Colorado fillers?"
I was actually getting to a little bit of Kansas City. I wasn't expecting to be, but they popped up for me, so I don't hate that. With the Colorado fillers was his.
Yes.
Yeah, I think if that's a spot that is in play for you and that you like, I think the matchup is good enough where you can get away with that. And if it helps you pay up to those Colorado bats, absolutely. We talked about the advantage with Colorado and what we're seeing there. So yeah, I think we can make that work. Brault is not a good pitcher that they're facing, so I like getting to. They got Sal Perez back in the lineup too. I hadn't even noticed that, to be honest. But I like getting to a stack of like that middle, those righties: Whit Merrifield, Sal Perez, Michael Franco, Hunter Dozier in there. Maybe throwing a Adalberto Mondesi and hope that you're catching some of his resurgence and some of his regression back to the good player that we know he is, hitting back second in the lineup from both sides of the plate. I don't hate that.
Yeah, it's another one of those cheaper stacks that can help you get up to good pitching tonight. It's not my favorite spot, I guess, but it's definitely, got potential. I mean, Brault, I think I basically just have written down here, like I think he's given up one home run this year. So I mean, that's obviously a small sample size, but I feel like there's better potential with other cheaper stacks. Probably Kansas City, better just from a floor perspective, but talked about Texas, maybe Milwaukee. I would probably rather go there than Kansas City, so they're not like super high, but
it does look like they're drawing ownership, which I didn't actually look at. They're drawing ownership, and specifically the guys that I mentioned.
Yeah, actually, I haven't considered them much tonight, so I admit that, but they are actually right up there. So, they look like they're going to be actually the most popular. Them in Milwaukee, the most popular like cheap stacks.
Yeah, like I said, they were coming up for me, and I think it is a lot of salary based and a lot of optimizer plays being accounted for in there because they're fairly cheap throughout that middle that we were talking about there. So that explains some of the ownership. So probably not as sneaky as whoever asked the question was hoping, but hopefully got to the right guys.
Well, guys, we have now reached lock. It is 8:05 here on the East Coast. Hopefully everyone has a great night of MLB DFS. Of course, make sure to check out that promo we got on at Awesemo.com where you can get 50% off NFL Weekly Pass when you use the promo code REDZONE at checkout. So be sure to check out that. So that is going to do it for Live Before Lock. Stay here to Awesemo.com all weekend long. We got you covered for NFL coverage, MLB, and so much more. So that's going to do it for MLB Live Before Lock.